If you gave me a Dune book in 2020 and told me that someone was going to adapt this, I would have slapped on your face. But then 2022 came and everything changed. Dune Part 1 was a breath of fresh air, a knight in shining armor. Director Denis Villeneuve did something most people thought was impossible. Despite many people disliking it, most of the audience were in favor of Dune Part 1. And because of its huge success, critically and financially, a sequel was inevitable. Dune Part 2, on the other hand, was... how do I put this? Was mid. He's calling it trash. No, you have to understand, mid means the middle. It's alright. I'm not gonna turn this into a Dune Part 2 video because I already have made. Is anyone even here right now? My retention graph is going to look like this. It's a good movie, alright. But what about the third part? What about the elephant in the room? Dune Messiah. The year is 1969 and Frank Herbert just dropped another entry in the Dune series, and by this point you already know what happened. See, despite an epic success of the first book, people just hated this new one. I can tell I was there at that time. Despite some people appreciating the political and religious themes in the book, most people found it disappointing and boring. See, Dune Messiah was a departure from the first book, an evil twin, if I may. From the very start of the book, even from the design of the cover, this book emits a different vibe. It showed a more character-based story rather than a spectacle-based one, but people didn't hate it for that. The book was received badly because it did something more devious. Dune Messiah showed the reality of Paul Atreides, and when you think about it just a little bit, you understand where these people were coming from. Dune was best known for its environment, its world building, its writing, its pacing. Sure, the characters were also good, but they were just an added bonus to people. Dune was best known for his immersing capabilities, but Messiah backed up on all of this. Dune Messiah ditched everything I just said and decided to show a more grounded, more realistic, a more monotonous and darker story. Instead of the grandeur, spectacle and vibrant ecology, Messiah was almost entirely set within the four walls. But this is what the people of the 70s thought. What do I think about this? It's peak fiction, better than a first book, should have been named the GOAT Messiah. All of the negative things I stated above only worked in favor of this book. Messiah just has a vibe to it, an aura which just oozes with darkness. If Dune is the day, Messiah is the night. I read the trade paperback of this book and I love the covers of these paperbacks, and especially this one. I think this also plays a role in conveying that this book is different. But why are we talking about the cover? I'm not here to talk about the cover. Jumped. A situation in which you get attacked by a group of people. It's a slang word originated by the African American vernacular English, mainly used in hip hop and urban culture. With that being said, Paul Atreides was jumped in Dune Messiah. This book follows the plans of the conspiracy, a group of people who have their own reasons to discredit Paul and his religion. And the reason why I say jump is because this group is vibrant with people from all backgrounds. They have a Bene Gesserit, a guild navigator, a face dancer, bro, even Paul's wife was in this. All of them just preying on Paul's downfall. These are the supposed bad guys of this book, or should I say antagonists, because everyone is bad in Dune. See, Frank Herbert, the author of the Dune books, thought that the first book didn't encompass the real idea of what he was trying to convey. He felt that Dune didn't even do its job properly, because people thought that Paul's rise to power was something to be celebrated, something to be praised. Sure, the plot of Dune carried a little critique of Paul, showing that the cycle of power continues, that the Harkonnens and the Atreides are two sides of the same coin. But that's the underlying narrative. Who even cares about the underlying narrative? Paul Atreides is the GOAT and Frank Herbert should shut up. That is exactly why Messiah was made, to show that Paul Atreides should not be celebrated, that Paul Atreides didn't provide liberty to the Fremen, but was the worst thing to ever happen to them. Hell, Paul Atreides was the worst thing to happen to the whole universe. But in his efforts to express this idea, I think Frank Herbert just threw in some random bullshit. Treats his wife bad? Check. Likes Hitler? Check. Turned on by his sister? Whoa. And the cherry on top, he unalived 62 billion people. And at this point, I'm supposed to go on about how Paul Atreides is a horrible person, but really, like, in my opinion, he seems like a chill dude. What? See, my opinion is that this is such a high number that the audience cannot even comprehend that. Just because he has a kill count in billions doesn't mean I immediately start feeling bad. I mean, okay, don't get me wrong. Paul Atreides is a horrible person, there is no doubt about it. But this is just a critique on the art. This reminds me of Attack on Titan because a similar situation happens there. When Eren starts the rumbling, it actually feels depressing because they just spent a whole season length of time conveying how the rumbling will affect the world, as opposed to this feat of Muad'Dib where it is stated outright that I boomed 62 billion people. What I'm trying to say is that it's not like Paul completely becomes a character that you just hate. No, for every chapter where he does some questionable things, there are 2 chapters which show the agony and consequences of those questionable things. Even after showing this, Dune Messiah manages to make you feel bad for him because basically he's just a lab rat, continuously being tested on with tribulations. Even though he is the strongest mind humanity has produced, he's rendered useless when trying to fight against his biggest enemy yet, fate. And I love that. This book's ability to slowly morph Paul into a helpless pawn of fate makes you feel his agony. And if you are thinking that this trilogy will end in a happy note, well, good luck. I don't even think anyone wins in this book, right? Dune Messiah has no definite winners. Dune is like the worst possible outcome of humanity. The result of this godlike figure was so negative that no one actually profited anything from it. There is a chapter where Paul stated that every little atomic action that he takes has such a large and gigantic effect on society that now Paul is afraid to do anything. He's on a level where people meet hide him on his every little step, and to top it off, his misery just keeps stacking over on itself. Dune Messiah will show the most inhuman things and will slide it off while the reader sits there like, bro, what the hell did I just read? Characters sometimes feel so out of touch, yet as the chapters continue, another deeper struggle emerges, slowly becoming numb to all his visions. Paul drifts further from those around him, and because you understand him, you hate and pity him at the same time. The worst part about this is that Paul is very much aware of what he's doing. He knows that the legacy Muad'Dib will leave on this universe will not be cherished, and just the feeling of damnation that Paul sometimes expresses to other characters or even talking with himself makes you think as if it was not his fault. Dune Messiah is a Paul book. It's not set out to give all the characters a perfect end, but it is to Paul, which really makes me angry sometimes when people say that Dune Messiah is a bridge book from Dune to Children of Dune, because it has such a perfect end to Paul's arc. But technically they are right. Just because Paul's story has ended doesn't mean Dune has ended. But somewhere inside I just can't help but think that Dune Messiah is just a perfect end to Dune. I'm not going to give any spoilers for the ending, but know that Paul's arc ends in such a beautiful way that Children of Dune will never match it. It's beautiful. It's excellent.
Hell, get off that, bro. What is you doing?
But it's not like this book doesn't have its flaws. I'm not gonna completely glaze this book. Like the complete shift that Frank Herbert takes from Dune to Dune Messiah, like me personally, I don't see this as a flaw. As I said, that the drastic change only works in favor of this book for me, but I can understand why some people wouldn't like it. Just like how people wouldn't like that this book is all talk. They might think that this book is boring because it's not really showing grandeur and epic fight scenes and sandworms. Almost all of this book is completely dialogue. Now that I think about it, this is the only Dune book where there are no sandworms. That's crazy. But yet again, this is not even a flaw because that only makes this book more serious and impressive. And let me ask you, do you really want that from a book? Like, why are you even reading a book if you want action? Like, go watch Avengers or something. I'm just naming all the good things. Does this book even have flaws? Character arcs. Yes. As I mentioned before, I think as an ending, this book doesn't stand because there are so many things which have not really concluded. So many open ends, like what happened to Alia, what happened to the twins. And as much as I hate to say this book is kinda like a bridge from Dune to Children of Dune. And even though Paul's character ends absolutely perfectly, Messiah acts as more of an appetizer to Children of Dune. Now that I actually think about it, this is what was going inside Denis Villeneuve's head when he was making Dune Part 2, because you cannot adapt Dune Messiah word to word without adapting the next book, which is Children of Dune. But at the same time, I think that he has taken this a little too seriously, and this is the reason why the title looks like this. The changes made in Dune Part 2 were abrupt. They will have a huge butterfly effect on Dune Part 3, like Jessica being in a third movie. Oh, you didn't know? Jessica is not in Dune Messiah. She just pisses off to Caladan after Dune and stays there till Children of Dune. In my opinion, there is only a slight chance that Dune Part 3 will actually be good. On the surface, there are things like the Hitler line, the horrible things Paul does, which happens to Chani, and the additional plot line which Denis Villeneuve will have to carry from Dune Part 2. But on the deeper side of the problem, there is this controversial take. I think somewhere Denis Villeneuve said that, frankly, I hate dialogue. And that's good and all, but that doesn't apply when you're adapting Dune Messiah, dog. Dune Messiah is all dialogue. See, roughly, his argument is that dialogue is a tool that should not be over-relied on. Movies are not TV shows. Some movies might not achieve with dialogue what they could achieve with raw visuals and emotions. It's like Christopher Nolan said, don't try to understand it, just feel it. But bro, even Christopher Nolan made Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer is all dialogue. You cannot neglect something so fundamental for a movie like Dune Messiah. This thing might have worked for Dune Part 2, but Messiah cannot work without dialogue. You cannot write lines like, as a servant of the Imperium. You have no right to say that after you just lost your daughter, your throne, your money, your army. Even a hardcore Denis Villeneuve fan will agree that this dialogue problem appears even in Dune Part 2. For it's a movie with beautiful direction and excellent visual, but falls short in dialogue heavy scenes like this. And don't get me wrong, whether this dialogue opinion of Denis Viciously Victorious is right or just a pretentious excuse directors use to dodge criticism will only be seen when Dune Part 3 actually comes out. And as Paul Atreides best said, I do see a narrow way through where Dune Messiah will actually prove me wrong and be a good movie. But as much as I love Daniel Naroditsky movies, I have my reasons for not liking Dune Part 2. And before you run to the comments on this video, please just hear me out.